Hello everybody! If you want to read all the stories in full, please go to www.steveuk.blog. Thank you. Short story 483, The Lost Temple. Intermediate. Deep in the heart of the South American jungle, the famous explorer James Thornton was on a quest. Legend told of an ancient temple hidden somewhere in this dense rainforest, a temple filled with priceless treasures from a long-lost civilization. Many had searched for the temple before, but none had ever found it. Most never even returned from their expeditions, forever lost in the treacherous jungle. But James was determined to succeed where others had failed. He had spent years researching the legend, piecing together clues from old maps and documents. Now he believed he knew the temple's location. With his trusted guides, Maria and Diego, he set out into the wilderness. For days they hacked their way through the thick undergrowth, battling clouds of insects and oppressive heat. On the third day, just when James was starting to doubt himself, Maria called out. She had spotted a strange symbol carved into a tree trunk, one of the symbols from James's old maps. His heart raced with excitement. They must be close. They continued on, finding more and more signs that they were on the right track. Finally, they reached a steep cliff face covered in vines. According to James's research, the entrance to the temple should be somewhere nearby. They searched the cliff until Diego uncovered an ancient stone door hidden behind the hanging vines. With a heave, they pushed open the heavy door and stepped into a dark passageway. Using their flashlights, they made their way down crumbling stone steps, deeper and deeper into the temple. Then the passage opened up into a vast chamber. James shined his light around in awe. The walls were covered in intricate carvings, and at the far end stood a giant golden statue. They had found it, the lost temple of legend. James moved forward to take a closer look at the statue, but as he did, Maria cried out a warning. The floor beneath his feet had started to shift. It was a trap. James leapt to the side just as the floor crumbled away, revealing a deep pit lined with sharp spikes. Heart pounding, he looked around desperately. The whole chamber had begun to shake. They needed to get out, now, before the entire temple came down on top of them. Thinking fast, Diego grabbed a long vine from the wall and threw it across the gaping hole in the floor. It just reached the other side. Carefully, they each made their way across the makeshift bridge, trying not to look down into the deadly pit below. With a final jump, they made it to the other side. They ran, racing back up the passageway as the thunderous rumblings shook the ancient walls. Stones began falling around them as they leapt up the crumbling stairs. At last they burst out of the temple entrance, stumbling out into the jungle, just as the temple finally collapsed in on itself, disappearing in a cloud of dust. James looked at Maria and Diego, all of them bruised and shaken, but alive. They hadn't managed to retrieve any of the temple's legendary treasures, but they had made it out with the greatest treasure of all, their lives. And they had a feeling no one else would be searching for that lost temple any time soon. Vocabulary notes. Quest, noun. A long or difficult search for something. Example, James Thornton was on a quest to find the lost temple. Similar words. Mission, expedition, adventure, journey. Dense, adjective, thick, closely packed together. Example, the temple was hidden somewhere in the dense rainforest. Similar words, thick, impenetrable, concentrated, compact. Treacherous, adjective, dangerous, hazardous, risky. Example, most never even returned from their expeditions, forever lost in the treacherous jungle. Similar words, perilous, unsafe, unpredictable, precarious. Undergrowth, noun, dense, low-growing vegetation, often found beneath trees in a forest. Example, for days they hacked their way through the thick undergrowth. Similar words, underbrush, thicket, shrubs, bushes. Oppressive, adjective, harsh, extreme, difficult to endure. Example, they battled clouds of insects and oppressive heat. Similar words, overwhelming, stifling, unbearable, suffocating. Intricate, adjective, complex, detailed, having many interconnected parts. Example, the walls were covered in intricate carvings. Similar words, elaborate, complicated, detailed, ornate. Gaping, adjective, wide open, huge. Example, James leapt to the side just as the floor crumbled away, revealing a deep, gaping hole. Similar words, yawning, cavernous, vast, immense. Makeshift, adjective, temporary, substitute, improvised. Example, Diego grabbed a long vine from the wall and threw it across the gaping hole in the floor to create a makeshift bridge. Similar words, provisional, impromptu, jury-rigged, stopgap. Retrieve, verb, get back, recover, regain possession of. Example, they hadn't managed to retrieve any of the temple's legendary treasures. Similar words, reclaim, repossess, recoup, salvage. Collapse, verb, fall down suddenly, cave in, crumble. Example, they burst out of the temple entrance, stumbling out into the jungle just as the temple finally collapsed in on itself. Similar words, crumple, disintegrate, topple, buckle. Story written by Claude 3 Opus AI. Image created by Grok 3 AI. To read all the stories in full, please go to www.steveuk.blog. Thank you.